Hello students, welcome back to my class. Dear students, in your previous class, while discussing the nationalism in India, that we have learnt about the impact of World War I on Indian economic and political situation, the idea of Satyagraha, Rowlatt Act, the Khilafat movement, and the spread of non-cooperation movement in India. In this class, let us discuss second sub part of this lesson, differing strands with the movement. The non-cooperation Khilafat movement began in January 1921. Various social groups participated in this movement, each with its own specific aspiration. All social groups participated in this movement, non-cooperation and Khilafat movement, with their own specific aspiration. All of them responded to the local Swaraj, but the term meant different things to the different people. The concept of Swaraj understood by different people in a different way. They understood in their own perspective. So they had their own aspiration. So let us go through the next aspect, how the movement spread in towns and countryside. So let us go with the movements in the towns. The movement started with the middle class participation in the cities. So those who were involved in the movement were middle class people. Thousands of students left government controlled schools and colleges. Headmasters and teachers resigned, and lawyers gave up their legal practice. So initially the movement got a quick start. So thousands of students left the schools, teachers and headmasters they resigned, and lawyers gave up their legal practice and so on. Council elections were boycotted in most provinces except Madras. So second point, the spread of non-cooperation movement in towns is the council elections were boycotted in the most of the provinces except Madras. So Madras, especially in Madras, where the Justice Party, the party of non-Brahmins, felt that entering the council was one way of gaining some power, something that usually only Brahmins had access. So here non-Brahmin people, who led by Ambedkar, these people refused to boycott the council election because they felt that elections were the only things which helped them to gain some sort of power and raise their voice against the government. Now let us go with the effects of non-cooperation movement. So as just before we have learnt that non-cooperation movement spread in the cities with the participation of middle class people, and people boycotted the civil services, and teachers, headmasters resigned, and lawyers gave up their practice, so and so. So here, what was the effect? So the effects of non-cooperation on the economic front were more dramatic. Here, impact or effect of the non-cooperation movement on economical condition was dramatic. There was a dramatic impact on the economical front. Foreign goods were boycotted, liquor shops were picketed, and foreign clothes burnt in a huge bonfires. So here, this was the greatest impact of a non-cooperation movement. People boycotted the foreign goods. So they boycotted the liquor in the sense rickshaws and all, and they burned the foreign cloth. So this was one of the greatest impact of a non-cooperation movement. The import foreign cloth halved between 1921 and 1922. Its value dropping from 102 crore to 57 crore. So this was the effect. The import of foreign cloth dropped. It was the value dropping from 102 crore to 57 crore. So greatest impact can be found in the economical front. In many places, merchants and traders refused to trade in foreign goods or finance the foreign trade. Here, as this movement was led by Mahatma Gandhi ji, people got inspired. They inspired by the Mahatma Gandhi ji, and they stopped to have a trade with they refused to trade in foreign goods as well as finance the foreign trade. As the boycott movement spread and the people began discarding imported clothes and wearing only Indian ones, production of Indian textile mills and handlooms went up. So due to the boycott of foreign goods, Indian textile industries, they got a bloom now. They went up. So there was a huge increase in the production of Indian textiles and handlooms. Now, examination point of view, another important aspect. So non-cooperation movement in the cities gradually slowed down for a varieties of reasons. Support the statement. Here, as we have learned that in initial day the non-cooperation movement got a quick speed, but gradually it slowed down in many cities. Why? What happened with the non-cooperation movement? Why it got a slowdown? Gradually it got slowed down. So let us go to the points one by one. Let us understand these points. First and foremost, khadi cloth was often more expensive than mass production mill cloth, and poor people could not afford to buy it. So as khadi clothes was often expensive, it was quite expensive, and if you compare to the mill clothes were quite cheap. They were cheaper than a khadi, and poor people could not afford khadi cloth and all, as they were very poor, they were economically they were weak, so they could not afford the khadi cloth. So second point is the boycott of British institutions posed a problem. So actually just before we have come to know that the teachers, headmasters, lawyers, they all resigned their work, they stopped their work, but these all institutions set up by the British. So it created a problem. The boycott of British institutions posed a problem. How? For the moment, to be successful, alternative Indian institutions had to be set up so that they could be used in place of British ones. So as there were no alternative Indian institutions, there were no Indian schools, there were no such government offices which are run by the government, Indian government itself. So as there were no alternative institutions, it became great problem. This alternative institution could replace of the British ones. So that's why the boycott of British institution posed a big problem, as there were no alternative institution which can replace the British one. So students, as they pass, students and teachers began to trickling back to the government schools, and lawyers joined back work in government courts. So as there were no such institution which support them or which replace the British one, students, teachers, headmasters, they rejoined the schools, and lawyers started the practice in courts, government courts. So hence non-cooperation movement in the cities gradually slowed down. So it simply indicates that planning was not proper. So lack of planning, non-cooperation movement in the cities gradually slowed down. So let us move to another aspect. Rebellion in the countryside. The spread of non-cooperation movement in the countryside. Countryside in the sense villages. From the cities, the non-cooperation movement spread to the countryside. especially in Awadh. Peasants were led by Baba Ramchandra. Baba Ramchandra was a sannyasi who had worked who had been to Fiji as an individual labor. So individual labor means contract based labor. He had been to Fiji and he worked as an individual labor. So the movement here was against the talukdars. This particular movement, as we said earlier, many social group participated in the non-cooperation movement and Khilafat movement, but their aspirations were different. They had their own point of view. Swaraj, it was not a concept which Mahatma Gandhi ji had a concept of Swaraj to bring the people together and make the country free from the British. But these people, those social groups participated in the non-cooperation movement or Khilafat movement, they had their own point of view, or they had their own ideas regarding the Swaraj or non-cooperation movement. Here, the movement here against the talukdar. In Awadh, the peasant, they organized the movement against the talukdars. Why? And talukdars as well as landlords. See, these talukdars and landlord demanded from peasant exorbitantly high rents and high taxes and varieties of cesses and rents are nothing but these are sort of a tax. They wanted to gain more and more tax from the peasant. So peasants had to beggar. Beggar is the labor that villages were forced to contribute without payment. So beggar is a system where a labor that villagers were forced to contribute without payment. It's nothing but working without payment. See, these talukdars, these landlords, they forced villagers to work without any payment. As tenants, they had no security of tenure, being regularly evacuated so that they could acquire no right over the leased land. So here, tenants, they did not have any rights over the land they had gained on the lease land, on lease. So their owner could overtake the land by any time. So they were very furious. Peasants movement demanded reduction of revenue and abolition of beggar and the social boycott of oppressive landlords. So they demanded, the peasants of Awadh, they demanded reduction in the tax, they demanded abolition of our beggar system and so on. So in many places, Nai Dobi, Nai in the sense Baba, Dobi in the sense a person who closed the is not anything but mistress. Dobi, the common word that we use in a washerman. So these Nai Dobi were organized. Nai Dobi, the barbers refused to cut the hair, and Dobi, they refused to wash the clothes. So they organized Nai Dobi movements by the panchayats to deprive the landlords of service of even the barbers and washermen. These barber and washermen, they refused to work for the landlords and talukdars. So they organized the movement called Nai Dobi movement. In June 1920, Jawaharlal Nehru began going around the villages in Awadh, talking to the villagers and trying to understand their anguish, their anger. By October, the Awadh Kisan Sabha was set up, headed by Jawaharlal Nehru, Baba Ramchandra and other few leaders under the able leadership of Nehru, Baba Ramchandra and other other leaders, the Awadh Kisan Sabha was set up in the month of October. Within a month, over 300 branches had been set up in the villages around the region. So, as the movement spread in 1921, the houses of talukdars and merchants were attacked, bazars were looted, and grain hoard were taken over. So, here the non-cooperation movement turned into violence. The motto of Mahatma Gandhiji was non-violence, but this movement turned into violence. These people, peasants of Awadh, they started to attack over the talukdars. They attacked on the houses of merchants. They looted the bazaar, and they looted the hoarded grains. So on. This movement turned into violence. In many places, local leader told peasants that Gandhiji had declared that no tax were be paid and land was to be redistributed among the poor. So here in local areas, in many places, local leader, they misled the villagers, the peasants. They told that Mahatma Gandhiji had declared that no taxes were to be paid and the land was to be redistributed among the poor. They misguided the local leaders in many villages. They misled the peasants. The name of the Mahatma Gandhiji was being invoked to sanction all action and aspiration. So here Mahatma Gandhiji was exposed as a person who would bring everything. He would sanction all type of action, and he would fulfill all type of aspiration. Here now let us go to the another part. How did the tribal peasants of Gudam Hills of Andhra Pradesh interpret the message of Mahatma Gandhi and the idea of Swaraj? As I said earlier, different people understood the concept of Swaraj in a different way, in their own point of view. So let us see what happened. How did the peasants of Gudam Hills of Andhra Pradesh interpret the idea of Swaraj? So let us go through that. The tribal peasant interpreted the message of Mahatma Gandhi and the idea of Swaraj in another way. In their own way, they interpreted the idea of Swaraj and Mahatma Gandhiji in their own way. In the Gudam Hills of Andhra Pradesh, for instance, a militant guerrilla movement spread in the early 1920s. Not a form of a struggle that Congress could approve. As in other forest region, the colonial government had closed large forest areas, preventing people from entering the forest to graze their cattle or to collect fuel wood or fruits. This enraged the hill people, especially tribal people of Gudam Hills of Andhra Pradesh. Not only were their livelihoods affected, but they felt that their traditional rights were being denied. They thought that their livelihoods were taken, and also they felt that even their traditional rights were being denied. They got anger. Now let us see what happened. When the government began to forcing them to contribute beggar for road building, the hill people revolted. As just before we have learned that beggar, it's a system where people were forced to work without any payment. So when the government began to force them contribute beggar for road construction, the people got anger and revolted. The person who came to lead them was an interesting figure. Person who led the Gudem Hill people was an interesting person. He was none other, he was Alluri Sitaram Raju. Alluri Sitaram Raju. So he claimed that he had a varieties of special powers. He claimed that he could make correct astrological predictions. He claimed that he could heal people. He claimed that he could survive even bullet shots. So these are a supernatural power. And captivated by Raju, the rebel proclaimed that he was an incarnation of God. When people realize, when people heard these all things, people believed that Alluri Sitaramu Raju was an incarnation of a God. So incarnation in the sense avatar. So Raju talked of the greatness of Mahatma Gandhi. He said he was inspired by non-cooperation movement and persuaded people to wear khadi and give up drinking. But the same time he asserted that India could be liberated only by the use of force, not non-violence. Here Alluri Sitaram Raju was motivated, inspired by Mahatma Gandhi. He followed Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy for some extent. He believed in that non-cooperation movement. He believed in using the khadi. He supported giving up the drinking, so on. But he was not supporter of a non-violence philosophy. He believed, Alluri Sitarama believed that India would be liberated only by the use of force, not non-violence. So there was a conflict between Mahatma Gandhi ji and Alluri Sitaram in their philosophies. So Gudem rebels attacked police stations, attempted to kill British officials, and carried on guerrilla warfare for achieving Swaraj. So throughout the Gudem Hill there was violence. People of peasants of Gudem Hill, they started attacked over the British officials. Raju was captured and executed in 1924. Over the time he became a folk hero. So he became the folk hero in Andhra Pradesh. He is so popular. Alluri Sitaram Raju finally was executed in the year 1924. Now let us understand the another part, Swaraj in the plantations. So earlier we have learnt that many social groups have participated in the non-cooperation movement with their own aspiration, with their own understanding. Here plantation workers too had their own understanding of Mahatma Gandhi and the notion of Swaraj. For plantation workers in Assam, freedom meant the right to move freely in and out of the confined place in which they were enclosed, and it meant retaining a link with a village from which they had come. So for this plantation worker of Assam, they understood the concept of Swaraj in a different way. For them, freedom meant the right to move freely in and out of the confined space where they were enclosed, and it meant retaining a link with the village from which they had come. Under the Inland Emigration Act of 1859, the plantation workers were not permitted to leave the tea gardens without permission, and in fact they were rarely given such permission. They were not supposed to go out according to the Emigration Act of 1859. When they heard of the non-cooperation movement, thousands of workers defied the authorities and they left the plantations and headed home. So when they heard about Mahatma Gandhi, when they heard about non-cooperation movement, they defied their authorities. They refused to listen their authorities and they left the plantation and they moved towards their home. They believed that Gandhi Raj was coming and everyone would be given land and their own villages. So they felt that they saw Mahatma Gandhi ji as a liberator. They thought that Gandhi Raj in the sense of equality. So they thought that Gandhi Raj would come and they would get their own land in their own village. So they, however, never reached their destination, stranded on the way by a railway and steamer strike. They were caught by the police and brutally beaten up. So, dear students, in this session we have completed what is nationalism, satyagraha, and different satyagraha led by Mahatma Gandhi ji and Khilafat movement and non-cooperation movement. So in next session we shall come with another aspect of this lesson. Till then, take care and have a nice day. Thank you very much.